Good afternoon. My name is Twinkle Aria Paul. I am the strategic advisor for Guyana Trans United. I'm currently living in the US, but I'm very closely connected to the work back home, especially for the trans community and Guyana Trans United at the moment. When I think about this discussion around living good and right and justice, the first thing that the only theme that comes to my mind is that living good to me is a journey to self-determination, and also a journey to overcoming the things or the forces that are working against us or against me. Um, you know, as as a Guyanese transgender person who lived in Guyana and experienced the reality of being transgender in Guyana, and since moving there and continue to stay focused on the work and connected with the people there, I um I continue to see all of the things or many of the things that are working against transgender Guyanese. For example, we have this issue of laws that are working against us. We have the issue of unemployment, we have the issue of discrimination, we have housing, we have this era of development that is occurring in Guyana currently, and transgender Guyanese are being shut out from actually everything, and everybody else is talking about, oh, the oil sector is booming, the tourism sector is booming, but how are trans Guyanese people included in all these sectors that are booming? We also have a problem with the education of transgender people, because many of us are being bullied or thrown out of our homes, so we can't get a proper education to even, let's say, we want to start. And to return back to the idea of a journey of living good, I want to say that we as trans Guyanese or as advocates doing this work would have already embarked on this journey. For example, the cross-dressing case that was fought by McCune and others, and was a favorable judgment was delivered by the CCJ in 2018. That is one of the barriers that we had overcome, because we had the cross-dressing law that got struck down. Now we have things like the Buggery law that remain. We have to worry about, situations where, for example, like there was a disaster and like the COVID epidemic, when there were reliefs and stuff giving out to the wider population, no transgender Guyanese didn't access these, didn't get any of these stipends or these monies that was giving out. And I think the only way that we could talk about living good is when we're able to be a part of the society, in every aspect, and not limited by means of education, by from employment, healthcare, just be able to participate in everything that is going on in the country as normal Guyanese citizens. That's my idea of living good. Some of the things, like, also to touch back a little bit on journey, I think in terms of education, now I know, as of recently, some transgender Guyanese persons have applied for this government program, this online government program, and we've been trying to support them as much as we can. So we're hoping that, we could get some results from that, because let's say, for example, now the ability to work is something that we're able to overcome in the near future, but then there's a requirement for education degree or a CXC subject. We want to make sure that people are prepared. So, to wrap all this up in a nutshell, I think living good is when this ability to self-determine and success and to live the life that you want to live is not hindered by just some forces, some colonial forces, by governments and all, people involved in ensuring the rights and well-beings of citizens are taken care of. I think when you're able to make those positive decisions in your life in a good way, without hindrance, that's living good.
Kamen Ichipun, American now, Ngar Immaculata Cassimero, Wapichan. I start on Sun. Good evening, everyone. I bring you greetings from the Wapichan territory, and I am Immaculata Cassimero, a Wapichan woman. I am joining you from Aishalton village in the South Rupununi this evening. Despite the challenges I have with the internet connection, please see with me this afternoon. So firstly, I would like to say that as Indigenous peoples in Guyana, we have faced many challenges that have further been worsened as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it includes poor access to health, where we have a lack of access to essential services, sanitation, and other key preventative measures. So we have experienced a higher degree of social, economic marginalization. And, we have all these situations that we faced on a daily basis in our lives. And so when we talk about a dignified life, for me, it's having the rights for me as a Wapichan woman to practice my culture, to practice the languages, the religious and indigenous beliefs and customs in our communities. We must have right to access education and health. But these must also respect and promote perspective of indigenous knowledge of health, traditional medicines, and education from our worldview. For example, we have our dances, our local ecology, art, craft, and many other forms of learning that we don't receive in the classrooms. The right to promote, policing our environment and rivers from pollution, from the effects of mining. So for me, it must be balanced to maintain our traditions. There must be a balance. So in the work that I do, I specifically want to talk about Indigenous women because I have been working with women across the South Rupununi in the Wapichan territory. And I must say that women have faced abuse, violence, just as any other, I would say, group in Guyana. And from the experiences that are shared across the South Rupununi, sometimes it's very, I would say, sickening. It makes me sad as a woman to listen to the reports that are often made about violence against women. The emotional trauma that women face on their in their communities. I would say there are even some elders who suffer from post-trauma, that even in their old age, it is affecting them. So because of this, that is something I wanted to change as a woman, to see how I can bring awareness to women, because that is something women must become aware. They must be conscious, to see how they can live a dignified life. And having a dignified life, it needs to be violent-free, a life where it's peaceful, a healthy environment, the holistic well-being of us as Indigenous people is, I would say, is good, is well. Everything must be serene. That is something my mom uses, to have a serene life. And that is something that is very important to us as Indigenous people. We like peace. We are not, I would say, a person who causes problems or issues, but we like peace, especially as women. So this afternoon, I just want to say that in conclusion, having a dignified life means that Indigenous voices must be listened to. You must, the government, different society, civil society organization must listen to the voices of indigenous people, because we are crying out, looking at the different situation as it relates to mining in the different territories. We must be listened to, and our voices must mean something. The rights of indigenous people must be respected and must be recognized. Our valuable contributions that we're making in our communities, to keep, our forest standing, to keep, I would say, to contribute to humanity, where the humanity can continue to live and thrive on Mother Earth. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It's so nice to actually meet some of you that I've been interacting with for the last 2 years in person. I'm so privileged to sit on this panel because I was talking to my neighbor and she actually knew my grandma who passed away and who had such a impact on my life, both in the environment and also in the gender justice work that I'm a part of. Good afternoon again. Living good for me means an understanding of my role in the unfolding of the earth. It means understanding the contradictions of feeling a massive burden to fix all of society's problems as a young person, but also feeling deep gratitude and privilege that I do get to do this work. The Breadfruit Collective was birthed through pain, in feeling fed up with high gender based violence rates and concern for the planet. In the current state, there is inequality and planetary crisis. But I believe that the climate crisis, when looked at with a feminist lens, and when climate justice approaches can be used, it can be the great equalizer, the opportunity to fix the systems that continues to threaten our ability to have a good life. Using this lens can pave the way to a better future of building with nature, centering marginalized voices, transforming our education. Living good means a lot of visioning and thinking big, being inclusive, believing that addressing gender based violence and protecting the environment is positively linked to a safe, sustainable planet. Living good for me is feeling the urgency of the climate crisis, seeing the destruction, feeling eco anxiety while healing from my own generational trauma that goes back to when that first boat left India with indentured servants. And knowing that all of this can be fuel to fix a broken planet. Because I continue to say, even on a broken planet, it continues to provide all of my needs and it continues to support all of the people that I love. Living good means taking care of my mental health and knowing that I want to do this work for the long run. And there isn't going to be any easy solution. We'll have to take on an intersectional lens and we have to also be practical. Living this kind of good life will mean not always being liked, but still understanding that that's okay. The work needs to be done. It wouldn't always be an easy fix, but it's important to do my part and do it the best that I can. It means listening and forging partnerships to ease that burden. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you, Rob, for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Um, Everybody, organization, government, base all their thoughts and some efforts and plenty work on domestic violence, but oftentimes economic violence be left out. Many moons back when I was a small girl, in my home, my father said, if Guyana get oil, then our money would increase and have value, and we would live a good life. That's a myth. I'm 59 now, and I haven't seen that good life as yet. Anyway, we now have a lot of money, oil rich Guyana, and here's what we see: house rent sky high, cost of living sky high, a pound of okra in the market 300, a pound of fish, Bangamary, which used to be the cheapest fish, $3 for $1,000, a pound of pepper $800 a pound, 8 to 1,500 a pound. And I one day I was in the market and I am a lover of mangoes. So I passed and I saw a young lady selling mangoes. So I asked her how much of those mangoes. It was six. She told me $2,000. $2,000 for six scrawly mangoes. So I didn't think I was doing right. So I rubbed my face and I said, she laughed because I wasn't laughing. I was serious. So I rubbed my face and you tell me the truth, six. She said, yes, $2,000. How could mango be $62,000 when we are growing mangoes right here in Guyana? How is that possible? How is it possible that a pound of shallot is $1,200 to $1,500? How is that possible when compared to the minimum wage, which is $60,000 per month? The reality here is that the cheapest house rent is about $25,000 in Georgetown for one bedroom house. And plenty poor families, I'm talking here strictly about poor people because I myself is grassroots and the sector that I represent is grassroots. So the stark reality is that you have a family of six and the house rent is $48,000. Now everybody have to find space. So some sleeping on cover top, some sleeping under the table, some every space in that house. That is not healthy. Now, we're talking here about good life. And many people don't want to hear about poor people living a good life. They think that poor people shouldn't live a good life. For instance, if a poor woman buy a washing machine, manage to scrape and scrape to buy a washing machine, they deem that she's supposed to have that when she have about 10 children, and to save her the time, she buy that washing machine to save her having to slave over a tub of clothes. So they deem that you're poor if you could afford a washing machine. What is a good life for us? We want all the good things, and this is not, we're asking for it. It's ours because the economy of Guyana belongs to us, right? It doesn't belong to one sector of people, it belongs to all of us. And I want to say Guyanese, but I'm not discriminating, right? But I'm just using Guyanese here. Thing. I'm God. So it belongs to all of us. And the thing that people like to do is say, I'm giving you this. No, you're not giving me nothing. It's not yours in the first place. It's ours. Right? So they would like to tell us, and I'm not knocking on anybody, that the minimum wage is $60,000. How you arrive at that $60,000? When house rent is 48, right? When the cost of living is so high, when everything's so high, and knowing fully well that poor people cannot live on $60,000, cannot, right? Some people have plenty of jobs, and I'm knocking here somewhat on. You look at me, I'm not knocking at you, right? People have many months back, when a particular party went into power, they said that they're not going to raise their pay because they're okay with it. But unfortunately, they not only raised their pay, they did it retroactively, meaning if they went into power in January, then they went straight back to January and they couldn't give the public servants money. How is that fair? How is that living good? Some of them is having plenty allowances. I like to say the only allowances they don't get is the thing that big people do in the night. That's the only allowance they don't get. That. But they get allowances for every single thing. What poor people have? Nothing. Poor people have to pay tax to washing machine. You call that the value-added tax. If you work a little money and get a little overtime, you gotta pay PAYE. And some of them don't have to pay no tax at all. None. And their money is fat. They have a thing called duty-free concession. They get that. We want it too. We want duty-free concession. Our idea, poor people idea. Yeah, but that's not fair. You didn't do that when the thing was gone. Just now, 2 minutes. Yes. Yes. Our idea of good living is that we want money that could afford us to pay our house rent in peace and don't have to worry in the night about how we pay rent. We want money that when we shop in the market, we don't got to look back and say, like, so we get picked when we get a little black plastic bag in we hand. We want money that we could visit doctors and not have to wait 10 hours at Georgetown Public Hospital for me here that I don't have that medication. We want money to educate our children, to make sure our children get a proper education. And last not least, that is not taken into consideration our health and wellness. We want to go on vacation too. We want to throw up our foot and close our eyes and enjoy luxuries. We want to be able to relax. We want to be able to say, oh Lord, we got to worry that the rent man coming today and we got the rent. We want to live a good life also, free from stress. So in order to do that, give us the money. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Martin Franz. As was already said, I'm a public health professional and I'm a mental health and LGBTQ plus advocate. Now, that being said, when we have the conversation of what it means to live good, I can't help but view that topic through the lens of a mental health advocate and as someone who has been very public about my own struggles with mental health issues. So for me, living good means feeling good. And as an LGBTQ plus advocate, I can't help but think of feeling good through the lens of that, the nuances that come from being a sexual or gender minority, because there are a lot. And for me, we always say in public health, availability is not the same as accessibility. Mental health services and resources are available in Guyana, but are they accessible? And in order to assess if they're accessible, we have to look at those nuances. Take, for instance, globally, this is not just Guyana. Members of the LGBTQ plus community are more likely to experience depression. They're more likely to experience depression for longer periods of time. Members of the LGBTQ plus community are more likely to attempt suicide. When we look at our trans siblings, that number is even higher. Members of the LGBTQ plus community are more likely to attempt suicide multiple times. We have to look at other factors that come from being a sexual or gender minority, such as the lack of familial support. How does that come into play and influence your mental health? How does discrimination in public settings come into affecting your mental health? How does, just as Twinkle mentioned earlier, a lot of trans people in Guyana face barriers in job opportunities. Many of them are not afforded the same opportunities as their cisgender counterparts. How does that affect your mental health? So for me, when I think of living good, yes, mental health services and resources are available in Guyana, but are they truly accessible when they're not sensitive to these nuances, when they're not a mental health professional who is unaware of the things that I just mentioned? Is no good to someone who is a member of the LGBTQ plus community. One who is unwilling to learn those things, they're even worse. And so you have to address accessibility. The other thing is, yes, mental health services are available, but if it's a paid service, that's not accessible because many members of the LGBTQ plus community, as I said, they don't have familial support. That means they often also lack financial support to afford those services. Even if the service is free, do they have the means to afford transportation to that service? If the answers to those questions are no, those services are not accessible. They're available, but they're not accessible. So for me, when I think of living good, especially in the context of a country like Guyana, where we talk on and on and on about oil and gas, the oil money, we're on the brink of exponential economic growth and development. How does the LGBTQ plus community and our mental health factor into that? What is being done? What are the conversations being had around mental health services for the general population? Yes, but specifically for us. Thank you very much.
When I received this invitation, I asked myself, why is it that I'm invited? Because I've taken a decision early in this year that I should recluse myself from certain forums and allow younger people to come forward. I believe I've done enough, but I recognize that I have to do more. So I come here because you guys have invited me. Let me tell you what. In any society, it is laws those laws are made for the people based on the behavior of that society. And the Constitution and the laws of this country are the instrument that just guide us. But those instruments are dead at the hearts unless they are activated by people. I come tonight to tell you that you will have to hold hands with people, with other groups. As a minority group, you have to hold hands with other groups. Push down the door and get to the table. The things we are asking for as a people cannot be achieved unless we hold hands and crusade to have them done. I want to tell you tonight that I believe that I'm making my intervention by looking at the United Nations Universal Declaration. Let me tell you something. It said that Article 19 says, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. The right includes freedom to hold opinion without interference or to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. That's what it says. But all of us sit down and allow those who we have put in privileged position to lord it over us, that we need to ask for things that they will like us to ask for. And that's why I'm saying that we have to hold hands and we have to fight. We have to crusade to get things done. Article 13 of your Constitution, your Constitution, you Guyanese Constitution. You know, when I started to talk about Article 13, people used to tell me at one time that the Constitution of Guyana is bad. And my argument has always been one which says it's not the Constitution bad, it's the people who we put to activate the Constitution. And that's why I believe that a constitution is dead at its heart unless it's activated by people. Now the same people who used to tell me that the Constitution bad is now telling me that the Constitution is good and we must start from Article 13. So I'm starting from Article 13 tonight. It says the principal objective of the political system of the state is to establish an inclusionary democracy by providing increasing opportunities for the participation of citizens and their organizations in the management and decision-making processes of the state, with particular emphasis on those areas of decision-making that directly affect the well-being. We don't do it. We elect politicians, and after we elect them to office, what we do, we said because we vote for them and they are in the executive, we will defend their intransigence, their lawlessness and everything. Unless we stop doing these things, we're not going to get what we're looking for. If we want to create a just society where we can live good, we have to start with ourselves and deal with it and deal with the politicians. We can't do otherwise. I want to suggest to you, as a trade unionist, we look at the core labor standards, the 8 core labor standards, the ILO standard, which speaks about, the 4 labor standards, they're divided in, they're put in 4, the 8 labor standards are put in 4 sections. They talk about freedom from forced labor, freedom from child labor, freedom from discrimination at work, freedom to form and join a union and to bargain collectively. That's what they talk about. We have to hold hands in this process. But in whatever we do here, Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, the 17 goals, 8 of the goals speak, you know what it is? 8 of the goals speaks to decent work and economic growth. In our country, my sister spoke a little while ago about the ills of this society. I agree with everything she said. I agree with her. We can talk about all the laws, but unless we have the people who are elected to office respecting those laws. She made a profound point when she said, "You're not giving me anything." Our elected leaders walk around and say, "We're giving you this and we're giving you that." She said, "It's not theirs, it's ours." And we need to look at those things in that context, that it's not theirs, it's ours. Article 27 of the Constitution speaks to free education from nursery to university. But people tell you that you have to wait to get it when they want to give it to you. You don't give, it's a right. You don't tell me I have to wait for my right to be respected. It has to be respected now. 24 of the Constitution speaks to real services. Have you tell me I have to wait? As a unionist, let me say to you, we have Caribbean brothers and sisters in United. In 1926, 96 years ago, Hubert Nathaniel Critchlow, the father of trade unionism in the British Empire, and the Caribbean labor leaders met in Georgetown, Guyana. And one of the things a few of the things they spoke about, one of them was universal education, healthcare, reform, prison reform, and they spoke of a West Indian and Guyana Federation. Even the Federation, which we call CARICOM, is not standing on the strong legs that take on board the concerns of the citizens of this region. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
So to me, living good means using my legal training to make equal rights and justice a reality. Because concepts like dignity and equality, the equal protection of the law, prevention from discrimination, they echo throughout the pages of legislation, international treaties, even court judgments. Yet, the reality is that many people continue to live on the margins of society. So, in other words, there is a disconnect between the law that we see in the books and the law in action. And I'd like to illustrate the point by reference to the experience of persons with disabilities. That's a community that I work with a lot as an ally in Trinidad and Tobago. And at the international level, the human rights of persons with disabilities are protected by the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Then at the regional level, their human rights are again protected through the CARICOM Charter of Civil Society. And we even have a CARICOM rapporteur on disability. At the national level, again, we see legal protection being granted to persons who have a disability. We see it in the Constitution of Guyana, for example. We see it in anti-discrimination legislation. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have the Equal Opportunity Act. In Guyana, you have the Prevention of Discrimination Act. We also see it in specific disability legislation, which Guyana does have. Yet, persons with disabilities continue to be excluded from the society. They're existing in that constant state of otherness, where they're not included and they're viewed as objects of pity or charity, and not as human beings with human rights. And just to demonstrate the magnitude of the problem, I want you to ask yourself these questions. How many persons with a disability did you go to school with? How many persons with disabilities do you work with? When you go through your everyday existence, how many people with disabilities do you encounter? When you go to the market, how many people with disabilities do you see? How many people with disabilities do you see on the television? How many people with disabilities do you see in the government? I'm sure the answer is not many, right? And so we have to begin to think of why is that so? In Guyana, it's not because of a lack of legislation. So obviously something is amiss, and it's up to us to figure out what that is. I think as lawyers, it's important for us to recognize that legislation and litigation are not magic wands. And I know that that is difficult because we spend all of our time and we're trained to think that we can use law to solve problems. But what I would like to suggest is that for us to make human rights real and concrete and to make a difference in the lives of the persons in the society that we all belong to, we have to undertake a series of 4 interrelated and interconnected activities. So the first thing we have to do, obviously, is we have to legislate, because we have to ensure that the law recognizes and protects and makes rights enforceable. The second thing we have to do is educate. All the law in the pretty fancy law books in your law offices won't mean a thing if people are not aware of them. And if we as lawyers don't empower people to defend themselves, because not everybody has access to an attorney, and not everybody will be able to wait the time that it takes to get access to an attorney. They need help on the spot. And so we have to empower them to defend themselves when we can't do it for them. The other thing we have to do is advocate. So we have to ensure that when we do have these laws, that when they're broken, action is taken, that people are held accountable, and that through that advocacy, we see cultural and social change. And the fourth thing we have to do, which is extremely important, is collaborate. All marginalized communities have a common experience of exclusion and otherness. And what we need to do is figure out ways for all of those communities to come together and harness their energies and their resources to push for social change. And I know that that is not an easy task, but I refuse to believe that it's impossible. One of my favorite sayings is that everything seems impossible until it is done. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the presentations on Living Good. Very inspiring, and I'm so happy to be here. I want to pick up on something Ria said about living good. And my understanding is that you painted it in terms of your responsibility as a lawyer. And that's extremely interesting because it's like living good is also about you being good. So it's like a responsibility as well. Can you expand on that as a lawyer interested in human rights? How you exercise this living good element as your responsibility to humanity?
So I think that a lot of the kind of lawyer that you are is driven by your own life history. So, my interest with disabilities springs from the fact that a lot of people in my family have disabilities, so mental health issues, intellectual disabilities. So that's why I think I have naturally gravitated towards that kind of work. But I also think that I would not be where I am today if the society didn't coalesce and support me. So I grew up, we had things really, really difficult. So when you talk about that minimum wage situation and all of those people having to eke out an existence, that really resonated with me because I lived that life. And one of the things that really made a difference for me is education, which is why it really pains me to know that there are people who can't go to school. And it's not because they don't have the ability, it's just because they don't have the resources. And the reason why I was able to go to school was because people helped my mom. And she needed help because she has no formal education. She has kids to take care of. My dad died when we were very young. She couldn't get a job. And so the only way that I was able to go to school is because somebody helped her. And so now that I've been able to go to school and educate myself and get myself to a place where I can help her, I have to not just help her and my family, but I have to help everybody else because that's what was done for me. When I was in school, my teachers gave me free lessons. One of my teachers gave me all of the textbooks I needed because she knew that my mother couldn't afford those books. When I got to university, and every time I gave my teacher essay to correct, they corrected it. Every time I came to see Miss Robinson, she never turned me away. And so my responsibility now is to do that for someone else and to do that for the society that I grew up in. And that helped me reach where I am.
Right. So everyone on the panel, thank you for being present and for speaking. In different ways, you're all activists and organizers. So I do, and in line with this living good idea, how do you practice self-care? How do you take care of yourself while you're doing the work that you're doing? And that's for everybody.
There are times whatever you do or action, it has to be selfless. You don't think of yourself. Because you will benefit from what the collective has achieved. And that has been my approach to advocacy in life. When it comes to my personal health, I try as far as possible to eat well. If I can say to you that if I go to the doctor and the doctor give me his diagnosis, what he's observed with me, I go to the herbal world to see what can help me. I always remember, let me just give you an example. I went to a doctor and he gave me some tablets, told me this is my problem, and he gave me some tablets, and I slept extra hours when the day comes. And I threw them away on the third day, and I went back to my herbs, and I was able to have control of my life. Let me reiterate, advocacy is about people's development, change in society. When the society changes, you who are advocating benefits. When it comes to your health, you must make it something personal to yourself and don't let nobody else direct you what ought to be done. Thank you.
Mr. President, questions? Self-care.
Yeah, when you do this kind of work, self-care is incredibly important. I came to realize just how important self-care was. I'm a survivor of a suicide attempt, too, actually. It's what fuels my mental health advocacy work. And after the second attempt, just about 2-3 days after, no one really knew. I didn't share it with a lot of people. A friend of mine came over, and in his defense, he did not know. He came over to my home. He said he wanted company, and he ended up unloading a lot of his trauma on me. So here I am trying to really come to grips with what I had just gone through. Of course, he doesn't know this, and I am having to console him while he tells me that he wants to commit suicide and there's no point to life. And these are things I'm grappling with myself. So after that happened, he cried in my home until 4 a.m. And after it happened, I talked to my therapist about it. And that's the first time we had a conversation about boundaries. And after that day, boundaries became very important to my how I approach my self-care. When you're very public about your mental health struggles, a lot of people find strength in you, a lot of people find solace in you, and it leads to a lot of people unloading on you, unfortunately. For me, I always let people know, yes, I am here and I'm here to offer support and help in whatever way I can, but I have to be in a good space. You know the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So I always establish boundaries. My therapist and I had that conversation, and I've always tried to keep that in practice throughout everything I do. I maintain my boundaries. If I feel like I'm not in a great space to do something or to hear someone's trauma, then I make it clear in a very gentle and kind way that I don't think I'm equipped to handle this right now. And I extend that into my work too. Like, I don't answer phone calls past a certain time. I don't answer phone calls if I'm in a space where I'm having my self care and you interrupt it, I'm not going to answer. Because though I maintain those boundaries for the sake of my mental health and my peace of mind, the other thing I do with my self care is, and I learned this in therapy too. I remember I was going through a very long, prolonged depressive episode, and my therapist asked me, "Is there anything that gives you joy?" And I said, "Not really, not right now." And she said, "Come on, something, it doesn't have to be a big thing." And I said, "There's this podcast I listen to every week. It's only like 2 hours, but regardless of however I'm feeling, these people can always make me laugh." And she said, "That's your self care." So from that day on, I stopped looking at self care as having to be some grand production. It doesn't have to be a spa day. It doesn't have to be a weekend retreat. For me, my self care, my weekly self care now is those 2 hours that I listen to my podcast whenever I'm having a tough week. That's something I look forward to. I also really enjoy cleaning because I've learned in therapy too that sometimes your environment and your mental health, they really play on each other. So for me, when I'm having a tough week, I look forward to cleaning my home. That's that my time. I shut my phone off. I don't answer any calls. I don't answer any messages. That's my time to think and to just have my environment reflect what I'm feeling and have that feeling be something good. So yeah, self-care is very important.
Thank you very much. So, Wintress, Joshua, the mic is already there. The other mic is up. Self-care. How do you look after yourself?
Never thought about self-care. Um, Being a single parent and everything rests on your shoulder, and the bills, the everything, and you're always on the go. Then being a wretched member, and a lot of things is wrong, and I believe in the power of fair play, that the playing field must be level for everybody to play in it. So I never thought, I always put myself at the last and everybody in front until I got really depressed. And I didn't even know I was depressed because I wasn't finding joy in nothing. I wasn't eating properly, I was losing weight, I wasn't sleeping. And then it dawned on me that something wrong, something is really wrong. Because in the night I jumping up to sleep for no reason at all, anxiety attack, and worrying. That's the thing. So what I did is have discussion with my coordinator who's here, my other colleague members. I would draw them and I say, "Hey, me feel good today," and they would say, "What happened to you?" And I would say, "Well, this is what's going on with me," and so forth. And I find that really good. And so they would say, "You went to the doctor. You need to do this. You need to lose weight." And we really have a gap, right? So that's my idea of self-care. I don't believe in tablets. I don't believe in doctors, although we do need them. Because doctors tell you all kind of crazy things, right? But it all begins with your mind. Um, Freeing your mind of every single thing. I remember one time Karen told me, "Don't think about nothing. Nothing at all. Nothing. Nobody. Just don't think about nobody. Just blank your mind. And for me to do that, really and truly, I have to go to a space, a real lonely space for me to do that. And I begin the journey of exercising, the journey of going to Durban Park and sitting by myself, even have conversation with myself. And I look at people and say, I'm mad, but I ain't mad, I just talking. I just want to relieve some of my, burden, because you could tell you, in life you tell people things, but you don't tell people everything. Sometimes you don't want to say everything that is bothering you, but you could talk that tree and say, hey, this is bothering me, that sort of thing. And I recognize that in order to help others, you yourself have to be in a good state of mind and in a good state of health. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
Thank you so much. I've been protesting since I was 15, and I think about this every day, about being burnt out or getting to a place where I dislike this work that I'm really passionate and really inspired to do. But I think starting the Breadfruit Collective, it was really intentional for me to create a space whereby we're healing in community and we're finding joy in our activism. I don't really think of the work as being outside of me. I think of self-care, caring for the environment, advocating for education, talking about gender equity. They're all interconnected, and it's all part of the things that I'm passionate about. So doing this work, it's something that brings me joy, even though it is depressing and so crushing to see the news every day. It is something that I do find joy in community when we're able to come together, collaborate, find partnerships, have conversations. One self-care tip, I think that's the easiest one, but it's the hardest one to master. I think understanding our breath and understanding breath work and meditation, and understanding that we are born already knowing how to breathe, but still we have to teach ourselves to breathe and to calm down. And that's something that I continue to practice. It's free, it's easy. It's not easy. I'm saying it's easy. It's not easy to do meditation and to understand that everything that you need, it's already within yourself, but society and everything is on the media is telling you differently. Self-care doesn't mean investing, it doesn't mean money, it doesn't mean spa days. Understanding that you are worthy already, this work is important, and you have to be your best self to do it. So taking care of yourself is always that first step.
Thank you.
So I am super organized. I'm sure the people that I came with on the trip have got a little taste of that. So for me, the way that I practice self-care is that I have a big planner where I sit down and I plan what everything is going to look like for the next 2-3 months. And on that planner, I make sure and write down that there is something that I am going to do for myself that I love. So I like fashion and art and music and carnival and spending time with my family. So all those things are written down in my planner. I like to go to the gym, it's in my planner. And when I do it, I tick it off and I feel so absolutely good. And the other thing that I have had to realize as well is that the energy that you surround yourself with has a huge impact on the quality of your life. So I don't like negative people around me. People who never have anything good to say, people who like to gossip, people who are toxic. I run from that like you would not believe. And the third thing is that I also understand that even though I want to give back to the community, it's not my job to make the world perfect. All I can do is what I can to make the world better.
For me, one of the things that I've always been able to do when it's getting too much is just switch it off. But more recently, I exercise, I swim a lot. And I don't any longer take it too personally, the injustice and everything else. I know it's there. But to a large extent, I think I'm getting better at it. It's not personal, you know, it's there. I may be able to do something about it, but not necessarily. And I do what I can. I think inside Red Thread, we have been very bad at thinking about self-care. It was just, you know, there's all these things that have to be done. We're just a drop in the ocean, but we just keep going at it and going at it. And bearing in mind that Red Thread is largely a grassroots group with not enough money, a lot of responsibilities, children to take care of, I think we have been very bad, and I think everybody is essentially burnt out, whether Wintress wants to say it or not. She spoke about herself. But I think everybody is. And so we are much more conscious about the need to look at self-care. I mean, it has been pretty collective, so keeping an eye on each other to see, you know, you're looking so good. Go to the doctor. You get the headaches too often. Check it out. That kind of thing. But yeah, so we're talking more about self-care and what is needed. And in fact, we're out for reduced hours. We were in the center for reduced hours since COVID. And that's not seamless because sometimes there are lots of pressures. Getting reports done, which Red Thread could take forever to do, and so on. But you know, we know that it has to be a consideration now.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, Nicholas.
So I just have a question. This is for all the panelists really, but the panelists from Red Thread really touched on an important point when it came to economic violence. How do we end economic violence? I mean, it's a big question, but I mean, everybody in this room, the history of the country, the land we live on, everybody here was born from that economic violence that is just embedded. How can we imagine something else that is outside that system, especially given that being the age I am, growing up, you know, we were taught that we do certain things as a country or as a nation, open up to certain investments and all these things that will lead to a better economic way of living, a better life. We're not seeing that happening, even though we have an emerging oil sector that not necessarily going to benefit a lot of people in the world, and it's built on this economy that is meant to be violent. So how can we come out of that economic violence?
I don't think economic violence will end in my lifetime. But it's important that we continue talking about this and continue looking to ways to end it. I think one of the big things that has to be done is this notion of the party form of government and the dependence on political parties. I think we have to overcome that. I think we need to be organized as citizens to understand that we can support each other and that we can challenge those bodies. And increasingly, we have to look in that direction as opposed to waiting for political parties to come and, you know, I mean, why did presidents come into here complaints about doing their water? Tell me. So there are these foolish operations in this country and many others in the Caribbean. And I think we have to organize together to think differently about the role of government and the role of the citizen. But as I said, the economy and the division of assets in a country is something that will not happen, I believe, until we go with the political party.
In Breadfruit, we do a lot of visioning work because I think it's going to happen in my lifetime, the economic justice, and because I'm committed to it. And I always remind myself that I'm from the same country as Walter Rodney and Kausila, and they fought. And it's important that we understand these systems of oppression, the patriarchy, all of it, and understanding the collective trauma that we're all a part of that bring forth these political powers that we have and we think we have to accept. I think there's also distrust in activist spaces and leaders that we have that are activists because they also come with their own agenda. I think understanding people power and understanding community power is really important, and having integrity in the work that you're doing, saying what you're going to do and actually doing it is really important.
So there was this point when Miss Davidson spoke that I jot down. Huh? Oh, sorry. It was she mentioned this disconnect between that there are laws, but still there's something amiss in society. Um, I thought of this easygoing culture that Ghanaians have. Do you think anyone on the panel? Do you think that we have an easygoing culture when it comes to tackling topics about minority groups? Do you think that there is that culture, and how effectively do you think we could move away from it and implement some sort of seriousness? So when we're talking about or addressing any topics regarding minority groups, like trans, gays, um, indigenous communities, women's rights, etc.
Yes, I think so. I think we need to assert our rights as Guyanese. We need to start standing up and speaking for our rights because many of us are too quiet. In my workshop today, we have been speaking about standing up and asserting their rights as they're speaking. And we need to start many of them at the national level. We have having change, especially at the grassroots level, even in Georgetown. I know there are different communities. You need to start coming together and hold, I would say, community meetings, so you can discuss the different issues that affect Guyanese as a whole. And that's the only way we can have these different changes in our country. So for me,
I don't believe it's a question of laying back. I believe that we have not learned from our history. And we have a problem. There are too many divisions among us. Regardless of what the law says or whatever convention or whatever we have written that are there, you don't seem to have people to respect people who are placed in privilege. I was talking with a group of unionists. The Children Congress at a retreat on Tuesday and Wednesday. And it is difficult for you to move to tell people, leaders, that they have a responsibility to influence the political, economic, and cultural, influence the society to have a political, economic, and cultural change. People see the organization still as an organization that you're gonna just talk about wages and salary. And before I type, being here today is, I believe, as a group that you may consider yourselves to be minority. When I say you push doors down, don't only wait for the government, push down the doors of the trade union, get in there, join it. What you do is to enrich the discussion. You widen the agenda base. We have to do these type of things. The trade union can't walk down the road and don't look over to see what happened to other groups that are discriminated against, or other groups that are denied what is justice is. That's the reason I'm saying that we need to hold hands together with our crusade for that change. That's what I say.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add.
No, no, I want to laid backness, right? Which was you think we too laid back?
Yes, I think that we too laid back until something comes knocking on our door. Say, for instance, domestic violence was a big, real big fight to get everybody on board with domestic violence, especially the religious leader. It it was deemed man and woman business. They ain't getting involved. The man gonna go back to the woman, it's the woman man, and all kinds of things until reality knocked at their door when they realize a dear one or a loved one for them get either killed or maimed by domestic violence. So we too lay back. We accept every single thing that is pushed down our throat. When I know for a fact Richard did a lot of picket against some atrocities. I don't like how big word because I expect them to use them on me. Against all the ills of the society, and we would go there and picket, especially when they had real killings, real killings of the black youth by the police, by the arm of the state. We went out there and picket, and we expect that mothers especially would have joined us in their numbers. No, it's not. No. And so people are too laid back in Guyana. I can't say for Jamaica and the other countries, but I think we're too laid back. I think we should really get passionate about things right here in Guyana. For instance, ExxonMobil is raping our country, and we doing nothing. We just see, how much billion ExxonMobil just announced that they get how much billion in net profit. What did we get? Come on, y'all tell me what we get. Guyanese, how much we get? Yeah, shape answer. How much we get? How much did we get? Nothing. And yet, we're not out there in our numbers protesting. Right? Suppose now, just for the record, we don't have no insurance. Just for the record, if there's an oil flaring, what will happen to poor people? We can't afford the health care. So things like this we should really get active on and demand some answers. We need answers because we live in Guyana, and as Christine said, the planet is already broken. We not care for our environment, we're not doing anything. And with this big oil exploration, every day you pick up the paper, we were laser 2, laser 10, laser how much, laser how much, laser how much. Me want to hear but how much laser you bore. I want to know what will happen if they have an oil flaring. So to me, for me, and I hope I speak for people I know I speak for a trade, we want oil in Guyana because it's benefiting us. It's damaging us. It got me fighting like dog and cat. Oh, the government announced 800 billion. You imagine that? The biggest budget ever. When I look at me, when I look down, me see nothing. Nothing. I still got to do maths in the night, subtract, multiply, divide, and still the money can't do. I still got to do that. None reach me household. I could tell you that. None. What reach me household is $900,000 from the tour milk. That is what we just. So we have to, on a serious note, get up off of our haunches and we lay back and accept a couple pieces of silver like that. Don't push a 30,000 down we throat. 30,000 as the, what we call it, Halima? The cash grant, right? They can't even buy, well, they say 30,000. People selling the haversack for $11,000 for haversack. How much are school shoes? How much are this? We don't need cash grants. We don't need it, right? Because it's helping us, 30,000 for a whole year. What, do the maths. Divide that by 31 days and see how much you get. We don't need that. So my thing is that we as Guyanese got to get up and demand answers and real good answers and better living for all Guyanese, not for one sector of the population. I ain't talking here about party politics, Indian against black, Amerindian. No, me talking about that. I talking for all Guyanese, not for one sector. I talking here about when I say the sector, I'm talking about the big boys. The big boys who could go and gamble $1 million. The big boys who could go and do this. The big boys and the big girls. We can't do that. Now we send 1/3 of the women that mean politicians think they can represent we. Huh? Represent who? don't represent yourself. You have to represent yourself. So for me, we got to get out there and stand up and talk for your rights. And they can't say them hearing we. The copy hearing, according to the Constitution, we guarantee the freedom of speech. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. I hope we're answering your question. So I really believe that the person is political. We are all leaders and we all have a community, but I think we forget the power that we have. And there's a lot of groups here that are represented. And we talk about ExxonMobil being this giant and the decisions that our leaders have made, it's already in stone. But I believe that grassroots people coming together, because that's not something that we do. We're not doing that. We're not working together. We're not working intersectionally. We're not understanding that the issues you face are the same issues I may face, and the resources that I have, I can share that resources with you. Understanding that we have to come together as a group, as a community, and have the shared voice, because we've seen how it played out previously, we've seen how it played out in the past, and we're not going anywhere. We're having these conversations we recycle over and over, but it really comes down to understanding as a person, you are political, you have a voice, you have a community, and as people representing our various organizations, it is supposed to be our right to understand each other and to work towards the common goal.
I know that you asked the question about Guyana.
So this is broad. The Caribbean, Caribbean,
I can't talk about. I was really surprised when I heard you say that, because I thought that Trinidad held the title of being the easygoing people. But I take the point that you're making about collective action and collaboration, and I don't think that happens nearly as much as it should. Simply because, if you sit down and you speak to a lot of people who experience human rights violations, you all hear them saying the exact same thing. So it is important to create those collaborative efforts. And I am hopeful, because when I look at the young people and the not so young, the young at heart, I see people who are actively engaged in disrupting systems, especially, the young people who've gone through COVID. You guys are not willing to accept the status quo because of what we all went through with the pandemic. We're more willing to question and ask why and say, well, no, this is not working, or we can do this better. So to me, being easygoing is not a bad thing, but you also have to realize that there is a time and a place for everything, and finding that balance. And I think we can, and we will. I have to believe that, otherwise why am I wasting my time doing this work?
Yeah. Good evening. I don't want to keep you for very long, only to say that this has been the perfect culmination for the series of events that we started not so long ago. I mean, these conversations about inclusion and access and hearing from various communities with sort of big picture themes of coming together and organizing. And I like the way that Twinkle said it earlier, that this is a journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's something that continuously we go on this journey for together. I want to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for sharing with us your experiences. And just as importantly, thank all of you for coming out. Many of you were with us from this morning, and it's been a very long day. But having you here as URAP, we not only come to teach, but we also come to listen and to learn. And the time that we've spent in Guyana, the work that we've done, we've learned so much from you, and being part of working together as a community, I think we have gained a lot as well. So safe journeys to going home tonight. Thank you for coming out, and even if this is the formal culmination of our series, we very much hope individually, collectively, to continue being in conversation and community with you.